All right. Like I said, just quickly again, for the people maybe have just joined, you actually can zoom into the session, into Microsoft Teams, just to zoom in, maybe see something better if you can't, and you can use the mouse and panning to move around to also see better. For those that are hard of hearing or deaf, like me, you have the option to turn on live captions. At the moment, so it only works for English, but we are having the English session here, so it will be fine. My name is Sauter. I'm a BI consultant at One Digit. That's a small company that provides several kinds of consulting services for banks, insurances, and others. Mostly in the SQL Server, Power BI, SSAS, and Azure. I worked since 2008 with data and have been born deaf. You might not notice that I'm actually wearing something called cochlear implants, which means that actually there's really an implant into the ear that makes me hear some kind of sounds. Basically, you can actually just imagine that we have 22 electrodes into the ear. So all the sounds, the whole the frequency you actually would hear basically are broken down to 22 electrodes that I have. I really, as a hobby, I really like to travel with my wife. Yeah, ever since the pandemic hit, actually, it is unfortunately it's not so much traveling anymore. But I really hope that I can do that soon again. I'm also the founder and organizer of Data GGIF, happens once a month on a Friday, just to celebrate the end of the week and have a talk along it. We also have a networking event doing that. It's an online event. I live in Zurich in Switzerland. So if you have a question, like Ben already said, please put it in text chat. I will answer them. I have several times of the session built-in breaks, so I can read them. It's a bit easier for me to get the questions right. If you have questions after the session, you also can contact me through channels. So we'll see this slide again. And just contact me those ways. I will try to answer you as well. As a goal, what are we going to do today? We will create a virtual machine on Azure with PowerShell. So I will also have a demo, and you will see how this can be done just with PowerShell. We also will secure the connection to the virtual machine via SSL, and we will install some software onto the VM via PowerShell. So everything we are talking about is actually with PowerShell. We also get some insights to the pricing. I will show you some examples that I have had experience in my real life. We'll see how this looks like and how you can manage it. So just agenda a bit more concretely, I will have the first why would we do that? Why would we do this? And also the architecture for it. I will talk about the security and the code and tools. And like I said, the demo. The demo is basically a video that just cuts the most important stations of the whole process. So actually, you don't have to wait the whole hour for the process to be provisioned actually, because this whole process takes around 1 hour. I won't make you wait that much. It's just a 2 minutes video in which I explain everything for the pricing. So why would we want to automate the deployments? Well, you always have the same setup easily. You can reuse it if you have team members. everyone can use it actually. So I have in my company I have 2 other people who also could do this, but they maybe they didn't dive into this code. So they have this the whole code, the whole infrastructure as a code actually, and just reuse it. That makes it much easier. You also can, if you have a development environment that you might want to delete for some reason, you can actually just delete it without any regrets because you have the code. You can just redeploy it, and that's easy to do. You also can actually just alter some parameters and do testing with it. So that's also much easier. It's also very nicely for showcasing. For example, if you have a customer that you want to show something, but maybe not your development machine, basically, just to have a copy of it or just another setup, then you also can use it with new parameters you might want to deploy. And it's also a great way to save costs on Azure because once you delete a virtual machine, of course you don't use any space on the Azure. You don't use any CPU. You don't use any RAM. It's all cost parameters you have on Azure. So yeah. And why should we use PowerShell? Well, you could, of course, argue there are other stuff like Ansible, Chef, Puppy, and whatnot. And one reason why I picked PowerShell is it's a native tool provided by Microsoft. Everything is here. Everything is documented by Microsoft, and it's free. You don't pay for this service as well. It's just it's usable. And another reason is that many DBAs are actually using it. It's just I'm also mostly a DBA myself, and I'm using PowerShell a lot. So this also means you don't have to learn another language just to provide a solution like this. There are other possibility by Microsoft, which is called ARM, the Azure Resource Management. I will show you in the next slide why I'm not using it. But this is just also a possibility that is a bit convoluted. Very newly, it's Bicep, but it's still growing up. That's just my opinion at the moment. It's not really mature yet, but I think this is going to be the future, and it's very interesting. But at the moment, it's not really fully grown up yet. I'm not saying that the PowerShell here in this scenario, what I'm using actually is ideal for any scenario. I'm pretty sure there are other scenarios like in enterprise solution where you have to deploy a lot of machines on one instant, or other cases. That's probably solutions like Chef and Puppy, whatnot, are better suited for this. But if you have a small case, like a small use case like this, you just want to try something, you just want to do something yourself without having anyone else from infrastructure involved, then PowerShell might be a good solution to do a proof of concept, for example. Also, if you are using a small company like I am, you don't need a huge setup. So actually, PowerShell is pretty well for this actually. So I mentioned before, there's also the possibility of using ARM, and ARM is looks like this basically, and this is just a very basic example that you actually can get from Microsoft as well. Here you already see this is quite convoluted. You have a lot of brackets, you have a lot of apostrophes, double points and stuff like this. This is, like I said, it's just an introductory example. And I've seen much more complex ones, which actually you can use in it very quickly. And hassle to maintain with. So another downside of this is actually it's not really possible in terms of you could discover what kind of objects you actually have for possibilities like which kind of SQL Server edition you want. Everything you have to actually to find out, or you have to actually download it after you deploy it. You can actually download this JSON file. This is the ARM, but it's not really very comfortable for people like me because it's not really human readable. So I want to give you some architectural overview on this concept. And we have basically on Azure three kinds of types of possibilities we actually can deploy something. And if people actually usually talk about Azure SQL, they usually talk about this, or most basically like this actually. But today we are going to talk about this, where you really have the full control about your machine. You have control on your operating system. You have the control about your SQL Server. So this is what we are going to talk about. And I feel like this is something is more often than not gets a bit forgotten in the Azure world. Microsoft also says this is actually the only scenario where you have 100% SQL Server compatibility. So if you have already a data warehouse framework in your company and you want to migrate it to Azure quickly, then this is probably something you can do very quickly and easily. And yeah, well, you also could do most of the thing probably also with the other solutions you have, but you also have to invest much more because you have to more often than not you have to change something, you have to adapt something because it's not 100 SQL Server compatibility. Also, in my experience, a lot of customers actually are not really ready to go to the full cloud idea yet. They're probably more comfortable to have a virtual machine where they have actually the system just like they used to have before. So as a basis architecture for a virtual machine, we have basically something called resource group, and you will see this is later in the code. Also, this is a concept you should remember and also should be aware of, because the resource group is very important in Azure. In Azure, if you have a resource group, then it means you have basically a bucket for several different kinds of objects that you may have within Azure. For example, you have the virtual machine itself, but to the machine there may be attached several managed disks. There be also the logic logs and also the network security group. So you have everything is basically packaged in a resource group. This means basically, if, for example, you want to move your resource group, let's say from Germany to Switzerland, you just have to move to the resource group, and everything that's within it, in this group gets moved automatically with it for you. You also can actually copy or delete the resource group. So this really means if you have a resource group, you have basically a bucket of it, and you can handle it much easier instead of handling each and every object you actually have. So now you might wonder, how do I bring my backup of a SQL Server database into a VM? You actually can do it very easily via drag and drop. There is a software provided by Microsoft that is called Azure Storage Explorer. And you actually have the possibility just to, as you will see to the next slide, just to drag and drop, so very easily use your backups to move actually. You also can map the file storage as a file storage as a drive with PowerShell. I will show you that. We will also see it. We will also see it in the video. That's just you can use it very quickly. And Azure file storage is basically just as a storage that Microsoft provides to have files stored relatively cheaply. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the smallest space you can have is 5 terabyte. And 5 terabyte is really, we will see this also later in the pricing. It's not really something that you have to be afraid of. So this is how the Azure Storage Explorer looks like. You basically just drag and drop it like you are used to from your desktop. It moves to the cloud that way. The Azure File Storage also has the possibility that you basically have the possibility to connect it to several different kind of VMs. So basically, you have one central storage for that. And like I said, it's also mappable in VM as a network drive. So you have the possibility just to work on the computer almost seamlessly, like you were used to in your local or in your on-premises virtual machine. Now, I want to give a word of caution. Actually, you could basically connect to the virtual machine via RTP just over the internet. This is possible, but actually, I would not recommend to do this. If you want to do an RTP connection to your VM, you should consider to encrypt it in some way. That means you need a tunnel over your RTP connection because it makes your connection much more secure. Microsoft also and other sources actually warn also that it's possible to scan ports so that actually your RTP connection may be risk of a DOS attack. So it could be shut down that way if you are not careful about that. And Microsoft also has some guidance of this. But Microsoft also has a solution for it, and it's called Azure Bastion. And Azure Bastion is very easy to set up, as opposed to do actually a VPN connection from your company network to the Azure. This is possible to do, but it's not so easy to do. Azure Bastion is basically security as a service by Microsoft. So you actually have quite high security. Microsoft says at least they really invest a lot of money into this. Azure Bastion works with the browser. The RTP gets tunneled via SSL, so basically just the encryption you use with the browser when you have a credit card payment, for example, is the same. You have actually a very high-graded encryption that you can use with. And your public IP address is not exposed at the time. So there is also not the possibility that you should have a DOS attack because the IP address is not exposed. Like I said, the alternative would be an end-to-end VPN from Azure to the company. It is possible, but it's not so easy, especially if you are in a small company like me and don't have the resources to set up something like this. So, as a introduction-wise for Azure Bastion, it looks basically like this. You go to the Azure portal, and in Azure portal, you click basically. You will also see this in the video. You click on the connection to start the Azure Bastion, and then you get basically to the Azure Bastion subnet host. which is from where you can go to the Azure VM. So I promise to have some breaks here for questions. Just step out of the presentation to check questions if you have any questions here.
So far,
I'm looking for so far we don't have any questions, or now I have the window. Okay, good. I have to get back. I'm sorry, I have to also set up the screen sharing again. So now, am I here? Yeah, here it is. So now I'm going to walk you through the code. Basically show you what the options we have you could change. Later also will show you how to parse the objects of the possibilities you have, so you can adapt the code I'm showing here to you. For example, you have the possibility to use your location. There's several locations right now. You could have several locations in the US, in Europe, in Germany as well, in Asia, and everywhere worldwide. You can change the location to where you want to. Switzerland Northeast is actually Zurich, where I live. So it's the closest place. I also could choose, for example, Switzerland West, which is Geneva. So to have another place that is a bit separated from Zurich, as it's also a possibility. Just going to call this conference lab. So it's just a lab here that I called like that. For storage, here I defined what kind of storage hard drive I actually want, and I just chose the cheapest ones here for this, so it would not be too costful if we are going to try out this code. I don't want to go too much into the network, but just a word of caution here. You can actually just change the subnet address prefix. You can do that, but also keep in mind it should not overlap with the address prefix for Bastion. Here we have an address prefix. The reason is that Microsoft states also in the documentation you don't have too many choices on the address prefix with Bastion. And this can be quite a source of confusion, like it was for me back then when I started with this journey for this solution. Yeah, I would recommend to leave it that way and just to take care that you don't have any overlap of the subnet addresses. Now, if you want to have a VM, Microsoft basically provides you a catalog. I will, like I said, show you how to browse it. It has a catalog where you can pick from. And this kind of catalog is basically also a way of you choosing how expensive or what kind of hardware you want. For example, you want to have pretty good, let's say, here's quite a reasonable VM size. You could have it has some cores, it has some gigabyte RAMs and gigabyte hard drives. This is what you choose with this standard size here of I picked here. You also are able to choose what kind of SQL Server license you want. Here, I'm going to, for this demo, I'm going to use the SQL Server Developer Edition, which is basically for free, but this is not used for production purposes. So if you want to have it for development purposes, it's fine. This is what Microsoft provides for you. But I'm also picking here is the Windows Server 2019. This is also stated here. I picked the latest version, so that means that they will also have the latest community updates for SQL Server. Now I'm going to show you how you can actually parse it from your desktop in Visual Studio Code, for example, just to check what kind of options you have. And here I'm going to parse, for example, the locations. And if I were to trying to find out what kind of locations options I have, then I can actually just also look for with a wildcard to get exactly the locations I want to have. Here you have the German North and German West Central, for as an example. If you want to know what kind of services one location or one country offers, because it actually might happen that some services are not available to your location yet. You also can parse them. Just as an example here, Microsoft Synapse is available in Switzerland. It's now generic. It's not pointed on one location yet, but it is actually available in my country. If you want to look for a specific VM that has at least some amount of CPUs and RAM, you also can do that. You can actually just look for, let's say, at least 16 cores and maximum cores, 32 cores, and at least 64 megabytes RAM, and with a maximum of 120 gigabyte RAM. So here you get this list. I think this list is actually cropped. This is not a full list. It's a bit more than that. So you actually have the possibility to browse the name, what you actually would want for the code, quite precisely. So you will have to pick what you want. If you want to look for the SQL Server license, you also have several options. Like you could have a SQL Server 2016 on a Windows Server 2019. You also could have bring your own license for SQL Server. If you have some licenses because you maybe have bought previously a license, but you decided to not use it on premises. You actually also could use it later here in Azure, which also reduces the cost you might have. In this example, I'm going to use, like I said before, this one. All those options, just also to name it, is Red Hat. Here is, I think, this is SUSE, and this is with Ubuntu as operating systems. You also have the possibility to change, like I said before. That I want to have enterprise. I want to have a SQL Dev or a standard or a SQL Server Web, for example. This is also possible to change. Here, I'm going to do another break. Just anyone have a question here? Seems not to be the case. Can anybody maybe confirm this? Great. Thank you. Come back to the presentation. Okay, yeah. Okay. Now, like I told you, you can actually map the network drive also with PowerShell, and this is going to be after the VM is ready, is here. You just can do it like this. So this is just also a standard code you can find basically in the documentation. Here you also have to name your name of the file store you have. You have to enter your username and password. So those are some parameters you have to change. Yeah, this is done very quickly. So you will also see in the demo shortly. And after that, I want to install some software, and I'm going to use Chocolatey for that. And I really love Chocolatey because it's actually open source and free. It has can download and install software automatically. It has a huge library of the software, so virtually almost any major software you can actually find is basically here. Chocolatey actually also provides a professional service. It's the basic paid service, but this is actually for packaging software. As far as I know, so you actually can deploy it within your own enterprise-wide company, so you can actually just deploy it the way you want. But for small purposes, like here in this case, you actually can just do it. And like I said, this is secure because it also does checksums automatically and often also antivirus scans. So actually, you have the possibility to do checks for you before actually install it on computer. So how do you use Chocolatey? It's basically just you have to install your Chocolatey, which is also a PowerShell package this way. If you are not able to use this, there are some other options you could use. I think you also can use a zip file and install Chocolatey that way. Now, if you want to install software, you just have to basically say Choco install and name the software you want to install. You can, for example, also install a GUI for Chocolatey if you actually don't want to maintain Chocolatey with just with the command line interpreter. But you also can use with a GUI, which I will show you also screenshot later. Microsoft Edge, Tabular Editor, Dark Studio, Azure Data Studio, Git, dbatools, VS Code, everything is you can actually just in one line and say in the end, yes, I want to install this, so you don't have to confirm. Because if you don't use this, then you would have to confirm you want to install it. But if you just add a Y here, then you don't have to confirm anymore. You can walk away from computer, it gets installed automatically and silently. So there are some packages you actually have to also have more parameters, like, for example, as much also the SQL Server Management Studio on SQL Server. You also can install this with this, but then you have to give more parameters on like where to install this like this. But more often than not, you can just install software like this. And also upgrading is very easy. Let me have a quick. So also upgrading is very easy. You just actually type in Choco outdated, and you will have some list here basically that says is this should be updated. You actually also can pin something that says I don't want to upgrade this. I want to keep it, even if I would accidentally say Choco upgrade all. Also a Y here again for yes. even I would actually enter this, it won't get upgraded. So you actually also can pin a version that you don't want to upgrade. Like I said, there is also a graphical user interface for it if you want to do it like this. There's also a bit more picture-wise looking version of it. If you click on here, for example, then we see the more bit icons of each and every software. But I like it to have it just have a quite a nice list of software which you actually just see what you have basically, maybe also see what is veraltet, it means outdated here. You just can also click with one click here again and say just upgrade everything, please. You also can say with a right click and say here I want to pin a software. It's very convenient. Another software I want to install to introduce here is dbatools. I also love dbatools. It's something that's often is also called Management Studio via PowerShell. Basically, you actually can manage your SQL Server with PowerShell. It's also open source. It's free. The code is also on GitHub. It was created by Chris Limmer, who was just speaking roughly half an hour ago. She maintains this with Jess Pamphlet and John Menton. It's really awesome. If you are a DBA and don't know this yet, really have a look at it. It's just going to change your life because it's really powerful and really easy to use. You can use SQL Server jobs and start some script you have in PowerShell and do stuff like this. Basically, just a backup. This is just, from the free official documentation there is basically also for Azure. You can do it on premises, of course. You can just have your C drive here and everything. You also can say which type of backup you want, and everything is on here. Just with this line of code, basically, to back up all of your databases on your instance. This is just awesome. Thank you, Chrissy. Something what you also can do on Azure is you can actually say tell on Azure to power off virtual machine at a given time. So you actually can also save money that way. It is also possible to start a VM on a given date and time. Of course, if you have a virtual machine, you also can hold virtual machine as well, just like you were able to on premises. It's backup for securing data, the whole machine that is possible, and the restore takes actually pretty quickly. It only takes a few minutes, and also it could be done in PowerShell, but I'm not covering this today. Any questions? Seems not to be the case. Can somebody confirm, please? Someone asked, why would you install the Choco graphical user interface? Just because, of course, if you have your desktop computer here, like at home, not for professional services, sometimes I think it's very convenient to use the graphical user interface. You don't have to think about too much about the lines of codes you want to write. Basically, it's just a graphical user interface. I find myself though more often not using it anymore because actually just use Choco outdated. It is quicker. I have to give that. This is actually quicker for me. Just one thing though, what you have to remember if you have Chocolatey, and use it with a command line interpreter or PowerShell. Usually uses PowerShell with Windows Terminal. Start the terminal in an administrator mode, so you actually can use it very quickly. Okay, any other questions? Okay, all right. Then let's continue. Now, like I promised, this demo. This is basically the video. Hope it starts. Yeah, here. Oh, like. Yeah, yes. So what we do is basically just, in the beginning you have to enter your password for it in it, and the password you enter here is also the password you actually get for the entering into the VM. You will see that later on. So it's just here in Azure. We are in Azure here in the browser. Here we actually also entered like I did before, the username and the password that we entered before. Here we also can set it on full screen. You also can actually, like so perhaps quickly before, you can copy paste stuff from your local computer to this server, but we only can copy text. Unfortunately, it's not possible yet that you actually also can copy files. And here I'm connecting the drive. And also installing, here you see we are already installing some stuff, the Visual Studio Code. So this is what we were running here. This is Chocolatey. We also can restart the computer and just wait until it gets reconnected. So the Bastion also kind of knows you're still here. It's very convenient to do this if you need a restart. Here I'm going to show you just to copy it from the file store. Unfortunately, you have to copy it first, and you cannot do it directly for security reasons. But you can copy it, and then you can actually do the restore with dbatools. Here I'm going to connect it to the database just to prove that it actually works. I just realized that I'm running out of time, so I'm covering the pricing section quickly. The pricing is rather complex. The reason for this is actually we have 4 different kind of pricing types. And the pricing types, they have some complexity itself, because you have to understand this first. It also depends on the hardware you actually pick, and it also depends on the software licenses. So actually, to estimate the pricing that you will have with your VM is not that easy, but it's actually quite easy to monitor, because there's a really good monitoring system. The standard is to pay as you go, basically, and you only pay what you actually when you use. For example, if you delete your VM, you don't pay anything anymore. But as long as you are actually having the VM, then you still pay for the storage of what you're using, basically. If you will always use it, it's basically the most expensive option you can use. But you also can, of course, like I said, you also can save money, but if you just delete something again. So there is also something called reserved virtual machine instances. And if you know beforehand that you will going to use this space for the next year, 2 years, or 3 years, those are the options you have, then you actually can also save costs. It's up to 72% cheaper. But if you have Azure hybrid model, that means you bring your own instance in, you actually even can save costs up to 80% compared to pay-as-you-go price model. There is also spot pricing. Spot pricing is something that you want to use just for testing, maybe other students or something like this. Microsoft Test, you also can use it for production for stuff that are not critical, that you can leave it if it gets shut down. Because if you have spot pricing and someone uses resources, then Microsoft may reclaim it for you and warn you 30 seconds beforehand that your VM is going to shut down, and the resources that someone else, so another customer needs, can use. But the cost is also 90% less. I see very limited use cases with SQL Server with it, because usually you want to have actually it pretty much available. Yeah, you can also set a maximum price for Azure Spot, so you also have actually a bit more control on it. You also, like I said, you can bring your own license. If you have a license that you have for SQL Server, unfortunately not for operating system though, it's just for SQL Server here. You can actually have a license that you might have, but you don't use. Like I said before, if a virtual machine is shut down, it costs less because you don't use any CPU or RAM. And you also get an email. What you see here basically is an email that you get, and you can just click on those links, postpone 1 hour, or skip this instance. So you don't have to meddle too much with it. You also can automate shutdowns. You can say, at 7 o'clock, I'm usually going to not to work anymore. So if you forget it once, it just shutdowns automatically. You also can scale up, scale down a VM, which also impacts the pricing. Also you might have more costs or less costs with that. You also can set, so it's quite important feature. You can actually have a budget to limit expenses, including warnings. You can say, have, for example, here set up 200 francs budget. That is about $200 per month. So you see, I actually have 84% of the budget done already. You also can say the budget is approved until this year and stuff like that. So you have really a lot of possibilities. And you also can say if the budget is actually exceeded up to 80%, for example, please send me a warning per email. They also have a quite good overview of it. What actually how you will going to use it if you actually use it the way you used before. Here we have basically the worst case, because it just assumes that you will continue just like you did in the last few days or weeks. If you are not going to use it that much more anymore, of course, the costs are going down. Here, just a short, quick price example. We have the storage, the VM we have picked here. It's basically looked like this in last April. I used it back then for several weeks, actually pretty much every day. And here we see the total cost was 138 €, which actually the Bastion host was the most cost, because actually I didn't delete the Bastion host, so I actually also paid for the service being available always, because actually if you want to set up the Bastion host, it takes about 10 minutes to use. So actually, it's just left it there. So this is what it actually costs most. So as a recap, we saw almost fully automated provisioning only with PowerShell of VMs with SQL Server and restored databases. It is possible. And the solutions uses an approach from desktop via PowerShell. So it's actually it was almost always working from the desktop in Visual Studio Code. The only time I went to the browser was to connect me to the VM and work into the browser. And yeah, Chocolatey and the dbatools are great tables. So this would be, I think I did a bit too much of the time. But if there's one question I'm willing to answer or later in the session, after the session, just send me an email and I will answer you.